For more on this, I want to turn to Daniel Turner. He's the founder and executive director of Power the Future, and he joins us now. Daniel, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Vince.
You know, I've heard from some of the candidates, maybe all of them, that the way to get the economic engine of the United States back up and running again is to stimulate American energy. It seems like this will be an important part of tonight's debate.
I'd like to think so, and I'd love to see the debate moderators ask some really concrete and specific questions. And, you know, I understand debates are made for a TV audience. They're made to get sound bites. They're made to be, quite frankly, good TV. And energy policy isn't always exciting. It shouldn't be exciting, right? It should be kind of perfunctory and basic. But I'd love to hear concrete questions about, here's one, the just transition to renewables. Do we even need it? Yes or no? Like, go on the record. Do you really think we have to get away from fossil fuels? And there are several candidates on that stage who I think are going to hem and haw and say, yes, look, Vince, I think we can all agree that climate change is, what is it? Is it an existential threat? Is it the greatest military threat? These are really important questions that are causing a lot of economic hardship to our nation and a lot of global instability. I'd love to have concrete answers.
And by the way, warmer temperatures, it turns out, have been kind of a benefit to us. If nobody wants to say that out loud, or very few do, more people survive in warmer temperatures. We've had fewer meaningful damaging hurricanes in these warmer temperatures. That has been a net benefit to us. It'd be interesting to hear if somebody says that on stage.
It would be interesting to see if someone lauds the fossil fuel industry at all, or what you just were talking about right before you had me on. Let's go back to the war in Ukraine.
Yes.
We all saw the photos of Zelensky with Greta Thunberg. I would argue that Greta Thunberg's green agenda has driven up the price of oil and gas worldwide as we're transitioning to renewables. We're not drilling more in America. Biden is proud that we're not drilling more, so there's less supply, so the price is higher. Well, Russia has taken advantage of that higher price. They sell as much oil and gas, right? We're boycotting it. The West is boycotting it, but they are selling as much oil and gas as they did a year and a half ago to Brazil, to China, to India. And what are they doing with all the surplus money?
Yes.
They're building an army. So here's a concrete question. Do you think the way to end the war in Ukraine is not to invite Greta Thunberg, but to increase American fossil fuel production and stop and lower the price of oil and gas worldwide?
Here's a key thing. Look, if you're interested in stopping the war in Ukraine and stopping the bloodshed, one way to do that without killing other people is just to increase the amount of energy production we have in the United States. It's an obvious thing. And I would actually put a question out. It's kind of rhetorical because you can't really assess the numbers right away. But how many lives would be saved if we increased oil production in the United States? It seems like that would obviously occur.
It's Reagan-esque. We win the enemy against we win the war against our enemies by bankrupting them. And if they have no money, they have the army, they have no infrastructure. Their people begin to rise up and in anger and in frustration. The Russian ruble is higher now than it was a year and change ago. The Russian stock market is higher now than it was a year ago. The Russian economy is doing better now than it was a year ago.
And they're accelerating de-dollarization around the world. They are diminishing the number of countries who rely on the American dollar as their reserve currency. That's the effect of all of this. And it's not so. In other words, it's not good for us. You know, there's nothing. There is no panacea in American politics. There's no one policy that will fix everything. But boy, stimulating more American energy production seems like it'll actually send us in the right direction on a bunch of issues. Economics, certainly, the well-being of the average middle-class American family, and foreign policy, more American security. What could be wrong with this?
Exactly, and that's why I do believe that embracing the green agenda is the slippery slope towards socialism. As soon as you start to say, well, look, we all can understand that rising sea level, as soon as you head down that path, you start opening up yourself to the environmental left. And the environmental left has a nefarious and thoroughly un-American agenda. So I want to see what candidates hold firm
Are you
on
hearing
that.
anything from any of these candidates like that? Or any of these guys, to your knowledge, being like hilarious squishes on this subject?
Oh, absolutely. Asa Hutchinson is a squish on this subject. I don't think he's on the stage tonight. I don't think he qualified, but the mayor of Miami is a squish
Francis
on this
Suarez,
subject.
who also didn't make
Suarez.
it to the debate stage tonight, yeah.
Absolutely, and again, they're afraid of angering the left. They're afraid they don't want to look like they're radicals or extreme. So they will throw the great American energy industry under the bus, trying to appease the left. But you know what? Appease me for a change, damn it! Right? Appease the 18 million men and women who work in oil and gas. Appease the hundreds of millions of Americans who are struggling to pay their utility bills and say, I don't want to pay $4 for eggs anymore. I don't want to pay $4.25 a gallon for gas anymore. And we will get rid of all of that if we produce more energy domestically. Does anyone ever try to win our vote?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a great point. So let me I've pulled up some of the candidate positions here as described by the New York Times. They did a wrap on this subject. Climate change and the Republican candidates. Let me start with Chris Christie. He's on that debate stage tonight. They quote him here. Quote, when you have over 90% of the world's scientists who have studied this, stating that climate change is occurring and that humans play a contributing role, it's time to defer to the experts, says Chris Christie.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
Next thing you know, Vince, will be standing in little 6-foot circles wearing our masks and sitting down at the restaurant to eat and take your mask off. Because that's what the experts told us, right? That is the slippery slope. Once you believe in the pseudoscience and the experts, shameful. Absolutely shameful.
Yeah, Mike Pence has acknowledged that climate change is happening. I don't think anybody disputes this. But he claims that radical environmentalists are exaggerating its effects and rejects as the New York Times puts it, scientific consensus that the United States must reach net zero emissions by 2050, calling that completely unfeasible. So Mike Pence sounds like he's got the correct position here.
Yeah, absolutely. Climate change is happening. I woke up this morning in Shenandoah, and it was 55 degrees. 3 weeks ago, we were talking about extreme heats all in this area, and the radical left was telling us we were all boiling to death. Remember the head of the United Nations called it global boiling?
Yes.
Well, where did all that go? The climate changed, as it always does.
Yeah, I love this time of year, by the way, just as an aside. Nikki Haley supports carbon capture technology, but has denounced efforts to reduce emissions. She says climate change is real. It's caused by humans. But she has generally rejected government efforts to reduce emissions. She has an advocacy group called Stand for America that says liberal ideas would cost trillions and destroy our economy. This is kind of a classic Nikki Haley assessment of things, which is she sort of wants it every single way. She's got a little something for everybody in there, doesn't she?
Yeah, and that's the problem I have when you start saying this is a problem caused by humans. When humanity becomes the enemy, then humanity becomes the target, and that's what we do. And that's why we talk about European-style pricing. That's why we talk about limiting people's diets, limiting people's mobility, things that they were very happy to talk about during COVID. So that's a really frightening proposition when you say that humans, not Nazis, right? Not communists. Humans writ large are the problem. Holy cow, that sounds like a call for population control.
Yeah, it's amazing. Vivek Ramaswamy opposes all government efforts to reduce carbon emissions. He says fossil fuels are essential to human flourishing. He's got that right.
Amen, brother. They've made life better for all of us. And all of those people on the debate stage flew there in privately chartered planes. They're going to get in their caravan of SUVs after the event. Fossil fuels empower their entire campaign.
I know. You blow through these small budgets with your private plane flights. It's insane. That's crazy. Tim Scott acknowledges climate change, but he rejects most efforts to stop it. Senator Tim Scott has acknowledged climate change is occurring. He once told the Post and Courier in South Carolina, there is no doubt that man is having an impact on our environment. There is no doubt about that. I am not living under a rock. He says Daniel Turner, Tim Scott does not live under a rock.
Well, I guess I do live under a rock because why can't you just have the guts to stand up and say this is a radical belief system that is neo-Marxist in its nature and it's neo-pagan and it is an absolute threat to American way of life. So again, we're playing the slippery slope towards socialism, acknowledging it just enough to not offend people. But that means then when push comes to shove, Vince, all of those folks will turn their back on this industry. Yeah,
DeSantis says that all of this climate change concern is just a pretext for, quote, left-wing stuff. I've always rejected the politicization of the weather. He says he wants to unleash our domestic energy sector. and reverse the Biden administration's effort to promote electric vehicles. We are tying one arm behind our economy's back, he says, by prioritizing the left's ideological agenda. Crushing regulations and endless permitting requirements is what his plan calls for.
I think that is absolutely spot on as well. So we'll give him a very good score for his remarks. Do you remember back in 2020, and this is really 2019, because COVID hadn't really happened, when we were having the initial Democrat debates and they were talking about climate? And I remember as clear as a bell when Eric Yang said climate change is already happening. We need to start moving people towards higher ground, right? Kamala Harris said we have to talk about regulations of our diet. Should we go after your cheeseburgers? And she said we have to have a conversation about that, right? Yeah. So who's the radicals here?
I know.
Who believe in fossil fuels, or them who are absolute insane?
Yeah, they are. But also they know better, too, because even though Andrew Yang said it's time to move to higher ground, Barack Obama didn't change his address in Martha's Vineyard or Kailua, Hawaii. that never actually occurred. And then finally, on the list of these Republican candidates today, Donald Trump, who is not on the debate stage tonight. He will be appearing in some counter-programming with Tucker Carlson. The New York Times describes his position this way. It is hilarious. His actions as president may have caused irreversible damage to the global climate. Donald J. Trump has mocked climate science and championed the production of fossil fuels, chiefly responsible for warming the planet. Wow, what certainty they have. Chiefly responsible for warming the planet, they say. Mr. Trump has given no indication that his approach would be different in a second term.
Brilliant. That's the best response of all of them, because that's exactly the God's honest truth, right? This is a control agenda, and the best proof that this is a control agenda is that it follows the same playbook as they did in COVID. What they did wrong in COVID is that they did it too hard, too fast, and too narrow of a time frame. It was only a year and a half. But the idea that you have to scare people, that you have to censor what they can read and write and say about this issue, that you get to exempt certain people. Nancy Pelosi can get her hair cut during COVID, and John Kerry can have his private jet during a climate emergency, right? It's the exact same playbook. They did it in COVID in a year and a half. The climate people have been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah, COVID was the test run. The climate is the big tyranny exercise to come, and Republican candidates on that stage tonight have to have their eyes wide open. Not just the ones on the stage, Donald Trump too, on that very subject. Daniel Turner, thank you as always from Power of the Future. Good to talk to you today, sir.